when I did the math on it, and there were like three options to it. You can have a duplex, like you renting out one unit and renting out the other. You can have a triplex when you're renting out two, and you can have a quad in which you're renting out 3 units. Obviously, the more units, the more rooms you rent out, the more cash flow you get to pay off your mortgage.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins.
Today's guest is a pediatric emergency medicine physician born in India, now settled in New Orleans, Louisiana. He redefines the conventional narrative of medical professionals, merges patient care with financial empowerment through innovative real estate investments and advocacy for multiple streams of income. This is goal setting and talking about getting started sooner rather than later. House hacking 101. This is MDHouseHacking.com himself, Dr. Ayush Gupta. Ayush, welcome to the show. Man, how does it feel to be Ayush today?
It feels great, Brett. Thanks for having me.
And you are down in New Orleans. It's a whole world in and of itself. And there's even another language I think that exists in New Orleans. But the food, the architecture, wow, it's beautiful. I absolutely love being there. Because I love food and architecture, both of those things. Ayush, how did you end up in New Orleans?
Yeah, so I was doing my fellowship in Michigan, and you being from Michigan, you know how it gets cold and depressing, and the weather, you don't see the sunlight. So after being over there for 3 years in New York, before that, I just wanted to be in a sunnier part of the country. So I interviewed for my job, starting from California, Arizona, Alabama, Atlanta, Texas, and New Orleans. And out of all the places, I think I interviewed like 10, 15 places. And after that, the opportunity that New Orleans offered was the best for me in terms of growing the department. I'm pediatric emergency, so growing that was a great opportunity. So I ended up in New Orleans. I had no connections with the city. I didn't know anybody over here, but yeah, just ended up over here.
Very cool. So from the Michigan down into really the Gulf. You're right on the Gulf there. But just a little bit about your medical history. I know that you were focusing in on, I believe that you were on the emergency medical piece, and specifically with pediatrics. Is that where you ended up?
Yeah. I trained in pediatrics, and then I did a pediatric emergency medicine fellowship, and that's how I ended up in pediatric emergency medicine only. That's what I do.
That's great. And kind of touch on some of these things we're going to walk into. Obviously, MDHouseHacking.com, you are the man that's been all about this. And I say house hacking so often because it opens up a whole new opportunity for situations where you're taking expenses and you're turning them into income. And I love this. And early on, you've created this pattern. Now you're sharing this with everybody. So I want to talk about a little bit how you got into house hacking. And then I also want to touch on some goal setting stuff because it's so important to really give yourself that angle right out of the gate. So when did house hacking come around for you, Ayush?
Yeah, so, I graduated in 2019, and like any other physician, any other medical professional, you graduate, what do you want to do? You want to buy a big house, you want to buy a big car, and I was going through the same path. And I was looking at this nice, like you said, nice architecture in New Orleans, big windows, tall ceilings. New Orleans properties are really great. So I was looking at that. And then 2020 happened, COVID hit, all the real estate market was kind of shut down. New Orleans was one of the toughest markets for COVID. And then I saw, as a medical professional, I saw a few things. One, I saw physicians getting furloughed. So a job that I thought was very safe, that was not safe anymore when I saw people around me getting furloughed. And the second thing I saw was your 401k, 403b, which is a usual path of investing, being shattered. Like a couple of days and the S&P dropped like 50%, 80%. And some of the guys were retiring from 2 million, became 1 million in a night. So at that point, for me, it was, I didn't know anything about investing. Real estate, I had zero knowledge about it. As a medical professional, we learned zero about it during training for like however long to do. So I figured out like the biggest expense for me, I'm very risk averse, like a lot of medical professionals. I was like, what is the biggest expense for me? And housing was the biggest expense for me. I was paying 2,300 for rent at that point. And I was like, how can I take away that housing expense? And after researching, reading a bunch of books, going to some courses, I figured out house hacking is a good strategy in which I can actually live in a portion of the property and rent out the other portions and reduce that 2,300 to as low as possible, at the same time creating an asset.
Mhm. That's amazing. And that's the idea of taking that expense and turning it into income and decreasing that expense as much as possible. What was your favorite? I guess if you pointed somebody towards a house hacking book, like what was a book that kind of stood out to you in your learning process?
Yeah, so for me, Brandon Turner wrote a good
Ah,
book on house hacking. You know, he used to run Bigger Pockets, the podcast back in the days. I think he has his own podcast and show right now. So
yeah.
that was a good resource for house hacking that I found. There's so many good online podcasts these days, and YouTube's on it. Everybody talking about house hacking,
Yeah.
but it's been. I mean, for me, it's been what 4 or 5 years since I've been doing it, but it's been around for like ages. It was
Yeah.
just the term wasn't coined at that point.
Yep. And yeah, Brandon Turner. So I've read his book on single family rentals as well too. It's just that he's just got a ton of information. They're very well written, so much information in there. So I'm sure the house hacking one is great as well too. That's great advice. Where I guess what the place where you started, what was the first thing that you had to overcome inside of your mind, outside of everything else, outside of everything tangible? What was the first thing you had to overcome inside of your mind to even get started?
The first thing I can tell you is a mentor telling me that you will never know everything. You know, as a physician, we try to calculate everything, right? We're like, okay, this is going to happen. This is the next thing we're going to do. And I have never done real estate before. So for me, I was trying to calculate the same thing. Okay, I'm going to go buy this property. I'm going to rent it out to these people. I'm going to have a contractor coming renovate this. And if I said it's going to be $25,000 for contractor, it's going to be $25,000 for contractor.
Yeah.
You know,
See
if
the
I think it's going to
smile
rent
on
out
my
for,
face when you say that? Yeah. Yeah.
you know what it is, right? It never is $25,000
Right.
if you same thing. So the biggest obstacle that if I have to tell anybody who's trying to get into any kind of business, investing, any other thing, even medicine, you know, we always think we can figure out everything, but the biggest thing that I learned is like there's going to be so many unknowns. It should not stop me from taking action. I just have to lead with the fact that the unknowns are going to come, and I just have to face them as they come through.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's so much into that in my experience doing this for a little bit of time. It's like finding those areas where there are unknowns, finding that I guess cushion of tolerance to put in there. Because even though it may not be 25,000 exactly, sometimes it comes in under, but we're not going to talk about those times because they're so few and far between. But just finding that way of managing and going with the flow of things to get past that thing inside of your head. Yes, risk adverse, trying to know the action reaction on everything is tough. But once you got past that and you were able to understand that, hey, we're not going to know everything here, and started taking action, tell us a little bit about your first house hacking opportunity.
Yeah, so for me, like my background was I was renting out for $2,300, 2,295. I'll just round it 2,300. So I decided what suits me the best. I didn't have a big family. I was single, just started dating at that point, and I was okay with being in a unit. Like there's so many ways you can house hack. Like briefly, you can like buy a big house, multiple bedrooms, and rent out other rooms, and you can live in a room. For me, that wasn't working out. So I thought I wanted to live in one unit and rent out the other units. When I did the math on it, and they were like, there's like three options to it. You can have a duplex, like you renting out one unit and renting out the other. You can have a triplex when you're renting out two, and you can have a quad in which you're renting out three units. Obviously, the more units, the more rooms you rent out, the more cash flow you get to pay off your mortgage. So that's what I did. I bought a quadplex up to 4 units. When you buy, it's still counted as a residential real estate property, in which they will be okay with giving you owner financing. So I was able to use 3.5% FHA loan for it. And I bought that with very little money down, lived in a unit. I kind of renovated all the units. and then increase the value by, I would say, 33% in like 6 months to 9 months. And at the end of 1 year of FHA loan, was able to refi, get to a conventional loan at that point, get all the money that I put in for renovation and down payment out. Basically, I got that property for $0 at then. And my overall expenses were 4,300 with me living over there, and my rental income was 5,300.
Nice.
So the spread that happened was, I bought it for $0 because I got all my money out. I was getting $1,000 to stay over there. So basically 2,300 negative to 1,000 positive. That's $3,000 a month net difference. Yeah. That was the basic numbers.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations on that. And because there's so much to it. And back to that mindset again of getting that first piece that you had to get. You're not going to know everything, and being able to go with the flow. There was another mindset shift that I heard when you were saying that too, of that ins and out, kind of seeing this as an investment as opposed to just a place where, hey, I've got to pay this. But when you were talking about you got all your money back out of the property and basically got it for free, that's a whole nother mindset. I mean, that's a complete mindset shift that probably wasn't there when you started doing this house hacking stuff.
I didn't really know that, to be honest. I would say I knew maybe 5% going in, and then I learned throughout the steps. I didn't know how to renovate. I didn't know what a line of credit was. I didn't know what a cash out refi was. It's like the same mindset shift going in that, hey, you will never know it all and you will learn as you go through it. You just have to have the right people by your side to help you learn through it. And you got to keep learning, doing the reps. I think that's what happened. Obviously, this is like a brief story about the overall 1 year journey, but there was a lot of ups, a lot of downs during the same time. Yeah.
I tell everybody, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. And that time when you're, feeling like you're in Michigan. Now, just because we're talking a little bit, I lived in Michigan for 40 some years. So the people in Michigan right now still love you. I only want to come see you in the summertime. But other than that, it's like in that ups and down periods, we've got this time of just, man, it's just not fun. And you kind of set back. You're like, why did I do this? What am I doing? But holding to that end game, this goal that you've set, you trust the math. Everything's going to work out. And then that's like that magnet that pulls you through these down times and gets you to the up times.
Yeah, for me, the two things that I think about is I heard this maybe a few years ago, and that's what I do. One, I think about when I'm 85-year-old. I'm not 85 yet, but when I'm 85-year-old and I want to go back and look at this time, and I'll be like, this is just the fees you're paying right now. Remember that time when something fell down and you were so stressed? And that was just the fee you were paying to go through learning this process. And look at you now. So my 85-year-old would never complain about it, And even now, like 4 years into, I've forgotten about it. I'm like just walking past briefly. And second thing is, if the same thing happens multiple times. So suppose I'll tell you an example that happened to me. One of the ceilings fell down from a bathroom the first week I bought the property. Nobody expected it to happen, right? And I was like devastated. I didn't know anything. I'm like, first week buying a property, a ceiling collapsed in a bathroom. So if at that point it was extremely tough, but for me, it's like just putting the head down and knowing that if that was a norm and that happened 1,000 times, what would I do? I'd be like, okay, it's the expectation that you said a ceiling should never collapse. That's why it's so tough. It's the expectation that the deal is never going to go bad. You get so disappointed. So if you just set a bad expectation, hey, it's going to happen all the time. So that's how I look at things when things are going tough.
Yep. And the tough times often occur too, based off of our mindset. Ayush, when I'm okay, I've got this 4 unit. Everything's going to be great. I'm trusting this math. This math is telling me that I'm going to be making money. But then all of a sudden this stuff starts happening and it starts like your world's falling down. Your ceiling's falling down. What's that? That's cash out of my pocket, right? Well, insurance. There's, if I had to put a tenant up in somewhere else, it's like there's more money, a toilet. I mean, there's just all of this stuff that comes out and you've got all this money coming out of your pocket. But until that property is stabilized, you're going to have these ups and downs, and being focused on that end thing is, I mean, you've got to 100%. I think it's a great way of looking at it. If at 85 years old, what would I look back and see of this, right? Yeah. I think that's just a great perspective there. How did you find this first deal, Ayush?
Just on the market. This was 2020, I was going to work. I was working a night shift. My girlfriend, who's now my fiance, she was,
Congratulations.
thank you. She was working in the same, we work in the same hospital. She was working, she called me earlier. She's like, you need to come early because I found a property. So she found the property.
Nice.
And it was a 4 unit building, like I said. And then I emailed the realtor the same night, and the next morning we went to see. It was a group showing. Like I've never seen anything like that before. There were like 20 groups, and they were like, okay, first 5 groups go see this unit. Now you wait outside the next 5 group, and then you go to see the next unit. There were like 20 group showings. I think what helped was after like half an hour of seeing that, I put in an offer. I was probably one of the first guys. I don't know what the comps were. I don't know if I overpaid or not. I remember the next door neighbor. I met him after I bought the property, and he asked me, how much did you buy for it? And he's like, you overpaid for this way too much. That didn't help, didn't help. But it's, again, the same thing. At that point, when you go through the process, there's so many things that's going on. I just have to go back and be like, hey, 10 years down the line, this property is definitely going to be worth this much or way more than that. And it was, and your 10-year picture generally compresses to way less. Like I did the work, or we did the work, and in 1 year that property was worth way more than what I bought it for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, just online, to be honest.
That's amazing. And one of that piece too on the front side is, so we've got a couple of things I want to point out for the listeners then would be, hey, we're on a couple different sides of the spectrum here. If I'm doing something at scale, I wouldn't be making the decisions that you had made on that first acquisition. I wouldn't have been pulling the trigger until I checked X, Y, and Z in my acquisition process. But on the front side of that, Ayush, you've got that room, you've got that tolerance that we're talking about prior to this. I'd mentioned that. Like if you can sit inside of that tolerance and still be able to pull the trigger and make something like this happen because you got your sweat equity, you know you're going to be riding this out for a few years. So you had that room to where you probably would have overbidden me as an investor,
right?
Because I've got to pay somebody else to do these things. I know where that market's capped at now, and I want to squeeze that seller as much as possible to get the best acquisition price. But being able to jump right out of the gate and go after it, I mean, kudos again to you. Congratulations for you to take on that risk and get across it, because that's not something you typically do in medicine, right?
No. I mean, I think as an ER doctor, we do take a bunch of risk, but it's calculated.
Yeah.
To answer your question, though, I think it helps a lot when you're house hacking as compared to as an investor. If I was an investor, which after that I bought a bunch of properties, I would definitely not buy it at that price. I would squeeze the seller, do all the things that you just said. But that's when the house hackers can like outbid anybody, because what is the biggest risk? You're paying for rent anyways, right? Yep. You're going to go over there, live, you're going to pay for the mortgage. Now you're trying to cut that mortgage down to 0 or as low as you can. So you will definitely, and you also have to put only 3 to 5%, sometimes even 0% down. If you as Brett, you were coming in and you were like, I want to buy the same property, you'll probably put 20%, 25% down.
Yeah.
100%.
30. Yep.
Yeah.
Trying to get my rate down. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. That's exciting, man. And then, now, where does that take you from that first point? You said you've bought other properties now, probably not house hacking, living in them. But where was the pivot then? Where did that take you, Ayush?
Yeah, the first one was just like a good learning curve. I think I went to PhD. Like I think about like going through 7 years of PhD in 1 year of house hack. You live over there, you learn how to manage tenants, rent, renovate. Since then, I just kept on buying like 2 properties a year. So now I have and I still house hack actually, and moved in between. So what I decided was house hack was a great strategy, and I still believe in that full time. So in between the first and the second house hack where I live right now, I bought a bunch of like vacation rentals, single family home, multifamily homes, and I put like mid-term tenants, short-term tenants, and long-term tenants in it, and then I bought under house hack. And that's what I do. I like try to house hack. In between, I elevate my house hack. So this is like way bigger place of house hacking as compared to the next one, as compared to the previous one, and now just properties in between.
Yeah, even in that, you're probably aware of that too. Maybe that direction. With the capital gains laws. Now, I'm not a tax accountant. Right. I'm not a tax attorney or accountant or a CPA or anything like that. I think that there's some laws out there that allow you to mitigate the amount of tax that you have to pay based on how long or how you actually live in the property. So you're
100% correct. Yeah, if you live 2 out of 5 years, you can actually don't have to pay capital gains taxes.
Boo, come again. Now that's a good story right there, right? That's huge in and of itself, especially if you're probably in areas that may have a little more appreciation than what we would do in rentals. So, you can take that on, you're living in it, you can take out the value. I always tell my wife is I want to make this nice when I'm living in it because I want the
Right.
value, I want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I get that value, but then I also get to sell it for the appreciated value and then pay less taxes on it because I lived in it.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
That's
That was the whole goal. I stayed there for exactly 2.5 years. So I moved to the next house hack. So I
Yep.
can actually take the advantage of the capital gain taxes.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I'm sitting in one right now that I think we moved here in the Carolinas about it's getting close on 2 years now, and it's like right on that edge. It's like I'm ready to go to the next one. I think let's stay. We'll see. We'll have to have a little juggling match here, but it's all
Yeah.
about I mean setting the right goals and stay focused and be disciplined. And surround yourself with people who are already doing these things and that can mentor you and help you because once you pull the trigger, that PhD thing you're talking about, the tuition, the cost of
Yeah.
learning this stuff in the real world is there, but we can lean on others to get that sort of expertise or experience from them as well too. What is it, Ayush, now that you're targeting on in the next 5 years? Like, where do you see your investing in real estate going?
Yeah, investing in real estate, when I started first, I was thinking that I'm going to have 100 doors. I'm going to have so many properties. I think I've definitely narrowed it down because I've realized that at the end of the day, the reason I started investing was to get the freedom. It was to get the time freedom to have the income coming in to do whatever I want with whoever I want and whenever I want. So that was the main goal. So right now, in the next 5 years, I love goal setting and I make vivid vision and vivid goals. So my next one is coming at 27. So just the last 5 year goal I set, which is ending on 27, was just to make like around replace my current income. I still work full time W2, and I've replaced half of it, replaced the full income by that time. And in terms of real estate, it doesn't matter the number of units I have. I would rather have like units which is cash flowing better and then have everything managed by my team. I have a team of VAs right now who do all the work. And yeah, that's how I make it as passive as I can, even though I'm buying actively.
That's awesome. It's awesome. And if you could go back, Ayush,
Mm-hmm.
to say, let's go, man, where were you at 10 years ago, Ayush?
Oh, I was doing residency 10 years ago.
Residency.
Yeah, 2014. I was my
So this is a great for the listeners out there who may be in residency at the end of residency.
yeah.
If you could go back and set beside yourself when you were at that point in residency with these goals that you had in mind, this vision of where you wanted to end up, but now having gone through the PhD of real estate and the experience that you have, the assets that you have, the relationships that you have, what would you tell that person if you were sitting next to him 10 years ago?
So the first thing I would tell them is, connect with the people who you look up to. So for example, if I was a resident and I worked with a bunch of attendings, and this is like a story from an attending that I had in fellowship. And I would see that attending, he would work for like 10 months and 2 months out of the year, he was gone. And I was like, why is he leaving 2 months every year? Where is he going? And he's like the highest productive pediatric emergency medicine. I'm like, what is going on with that person? So one day I took some courage. I went up and asked him, what are you doing? He's like, I travel. I leave everything. I travel. I spend time with my kids. I go to other countries. And he comes back. I'm like, I'm refreshed. I took a mini vacation like every year. So that was my goal. I love traveling. And I was like, okay, so that's how I want to be. So I asked him, what are you doing to do that? He's like, I have a bunch of real estate and I buy and make it as passive as I can. And that gives me cash flow. So I don't have to really worry about taking 2 months off. And I don't have to worry about the paycheck. So if that's what I did in fellowship. And if somebody is a resident who's like thinking about what I can do, like talk to the guys who are ahead of you, talk to the people who you look up to. And it might be someone in your program. It might be someone right next to it. Some might be online. Everybody's so helpful. I would say reach out to that person and talk to them, take them out for lunch, coffee, anything. If a restaurant wants to take me out for coffee, I would not be having a problem with that. But that's what I would say. Like starting out, I can give you like 20 different strategies to go about it, but this is like the simplest thing, very actionable. Look at your people around you, see the one who's most happiest and see what they're doing and how they're getting it. And then just learn from them, pick
That's
their
amazing.
brain.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And one of the craziest things in life, Ayush, is that whether most of us probably are unaware, but everything that we need is already around us.
Yeah.
Everything that we need has already been provided to us. And it's the perspective, it's our perspective that creates the obstacle that keeps us from getting what we want in a lot of situations. So starting that out, like we talked about, Ayush, is that mindset shift of, hey, you're not going to know everything here.
Yeah.
And then, hey, let's reach out to somebody who has already gone through this, is already doing this, maybe even living or pushing towards the life that I could see myself living. And just ask that question, make that introduction, expand associations. And I would even say, don't be afraid to reach outside of your circle too.
Yeah,
To
100%.
see what's going on.
Yeah, when I started house hacking, same thing. I had zero idea about house hacking. I messaged at least like 5 or 10 people in the circle who were outside of me or who were inside of me just to be like, hey, can you be my mentor? I am house hacking. I've never done real estate before. And I got a lot of no's. I got a lot of like, hey, I don't have time for this, or very expensive coaching programs. But then eventually I found somebody who I coached with for like 2 years. And every week we used to meet on Tuesday mornings at 7 a.m.
Oh, wow.
He was local. And then it used to be like my anxiety, when you start something, your anxiety level is so high, and then he would just calm you down. It's like meeting a coach. And then overall you become stable. So that's it. I think it's just, I am a big proponent of like getting to A and B. And I think there's somebody who can help you to go to A and B faster. If you try to do it yourself, rather than trying to do it yourself.
Yep. Yeah, it could be faster, it could be funner.
Yeah.
We could go farther, all of those things. Well, hey, there's mdhousehacking.com is a website that the listeners can go and find out more about you, connect with you. And maybe even you could, maybe somebody could come down there to New Orleans and take you out to coffee every Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. That was a wonderful deal, by the way. That's mdhousehacking.com is the website. Check it out. Check out Ayush. Man, Ayush, it's been an absolute blast. I know you're coming up against another appointment here, so I want to make sure we leave in time for that. But so grateful for your time today, man. Keep it going.
Thank you so much, Brett. I heard your podcast. You do a great job. Keep doing it, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. It's a blessing. It's so cool to meet wonderful people and learn so many things, because every day I get to talk with wonderful people who have wonderful experiences, and they're sharing them. And I'm like a sponge. I've got it turned on, Ayush. I'm just absorbing everything. So, thank you again for your time today. The listeners out there, thank you for your time and your attention. I know I say it every day, but I'm just so grateful that you've given us your attention today, and you choose to turn us on, whether you're in an office, whether you're in the hospital, exercising, wherever you're at. We really appreciate that. If you get the chance, leave us a review. If you have any questions, you want to be a guest, if you want to talk more to Ayush, you can email us as well too, info@physicianwealthsystems.com. I'm waiting for an email to come to me, Ayush. That's info@physicianwealthsystems.com. I need to give like free giveaways and get that email rolling. But thanks again for your time and attention. This is the Real Estate Mogul MD.